A hush pressed against the ancient stones of the citadel, as if sound itself were wary of trespassing in such a place. Here, beyond the reach of the sun's warmth and the world's hope, lay a fortress suspended between dusk and darkness, a labyrinthine monument to judgment carved out of cold gray rock. In this realm, justice moved with measured indifference, and the reality of human frailty seeped into every corridor like a slow, unyielding fog. The Citadel of Penance was not a prison by mere decree. It was a vessel designed to contain the irredeemable, a last haven for secrets best locked away from history. Men and women arrived here shrouded in infamy, crossing the threshold where the world's noise and mercy could no longer reach. Even the air seemed subdued, heavy with resignation and the silent ache of those condemned to vanish in its gloom. Those stationed within its walls learned quickly to dress themselves in detachment. Compassion here seems a contagion no one could afford. Elias, captain of the guard, moved through this world with footsteps that echoed too loudly in the silence. Duty had etched itself into his posture, worn his face into hard lines, and shaped his gaze into something merely opaque. He was not the monster the prisoners whispered of, nor was he the blind instrument of cruelty the outside world sometimes pictured. He was, instead, a weary man balancing honor on a brittle fulcrum, counting out each day by the shadows that crossed the execution corridor, the infamous Twilight Path that consumed the condemned in its icy procession. Every surface here bore the signatures of sorrow and the marks of 1,000 hands seeking grace and finding none. Within the barracks, a hierarchy of loyalty and fear coiled in uneasy truce. His superior obsessed over protocols and precise ledgers of sin, convinced that order alone could inoculate the citadel against the chaos of conscience. Among the ranks, a younger guard wore his authority like an unsheathed blade, gleefully testing the boundaries of brutality under a veneer of official sanction. Yet for every sneer and shouted command, there lingered also the soft exchange of glances among those who still remembered kindness, who felt the rustle of shame brushing their minds in the quiet hours before dawn. It was here, in this space, stitched together by dread and custom, the world shifted once more. The arrival of Kael was not heralded by the usual clamor reserved for criminals of legend. Instead, an uneasy silence draped itself around him, the burly frame of the accused muffling the usual insults and jests. Stories about his crime trickled like cold water along the walls, evil both monstrous and unthinkable, detailed in every line of accusation. The charges were explicit and damning. The ritualistic destruction of 2 children from an influential family, acts so heinous they had shaken the very foundations of the kingdom's conscience. Yet when Kael passed through the gates, the darkness that trailed him felt strangely misplaced, the terror in his eyes more raw and childlike than monstrous. The Citadel's rituals played out as always, records checked twice, weapons counted, the condemned locked away as their courage and hope drained with each tick of the clock. But beneath that surface, something imperceptible hovered in the air, a tension not from violence but from the intrusion of a mystery no rulebook could contain. Elias watched, at first dispassionately, as the machinery of justice lumbered forward. Yet in Kael's trembling silence and startling gentleness toward a pale, half-starved creature that called the corridor home, Elias felt unfamiliar threads tug at the edifice of certainty he had woven for himself. Each day that passed, the citadel pressed inwards, its oppressive architecture mirroring the narrowing paths within Elias's own mind. Doubt seeped in through the cracks left by years of duty, gnawing at the conviction that justice, once set in motion, could not err. Above, the clouds hung motionless, as if reluctant to witness what unfolded below. Inside, time sketched out patterns of regret and uneasy conscience, whispering that even amidst stone and steel, the essence of light or darkness could pivot upon the faint tremor of a single human heart. As the citadel braced itself for another execution and the Twilight Path waited, black stones cool beneath the unyielding march of fate, a question, silent but relentless, began to rise. In this place built to extinguish hope, could a single truth, a single act of courage or compassion, hope to survive? And, if it did, what price would the world extract from those audacious enough to defy its silence? The walls themselves seemed to hold their breath. The story was just beginning. What sets a soul apart at the edge of despair is not always found in mighty actions, but in the quiet, almost invisible acts of endurance that chiseled the shape of character. In the winding undercrofts of the Citadel, this endurance played out not with the force of an avalanche, but through the steady, relentless erosion of certainty. While most assumed the foundations of justice were immovable, cracks formed in silence, growing with the weight of the unseen and the unspoken. For Elias, each morning arrived as a subtle ordeal of choosing to rise and step into the ranks when remaining in shadow might have been easier. The very routine, armor cold against skin, keys clattering with the monotony of duty, became a measure of defiance against the numbness threatening to swallow him whole. As seasons shifted outside, the interior of the Citadel remained immutable in its gloom, yet the smallest shifts could splinter even the most fortified spirit. Here, the trial did not always roar. Often it whispered in the shape of doubts exchanged in the dimness, of hesitations held too tightly behind the eyes. For the men and women serving under Elias, resilience grew in spaces between outbursts, in the discipline of not surrendering empathy entirely to the machinery of punishment. Those brief flickers, an outstretched hand bandaging a wound, or a glance loaded with apology, stoked coals of humanity left too long unattended. Resilience of faith, however, is rarely a solitary affair. It is tested in the crucible of relationship, where allegiance is as brittle as hope. Among the guards, alliances were forged not on grand declarations, but in shared meals, quiet conversations in alcoves, moments where the pressure of conformity softened enough to allow glimpses of real sentiment. Just as rust eats gradually at iron, so too did the slow corrosion of trust wear away bonds. Yet, paradoxically, it was within these fissures that something vital struggled to survive. A stubborn, flickering urge toward truth that refused to be extinguished by the weight of authority. Moving beyond the outer facades, consider the storm within Elias. Now, imagine yourself pressed against the same stone, required to choose between the comfort of conformity and the hazard of listening to your conscience. The spiritual trial becomes a reckoning, a mirror forcing each observer to ask, what would I risk to stand beside what is right rather than what is commanded? In Elias's world, whispers of change began with a glance that lingered too long on a trembling prisoner, or a heartbeat spent wondering whether the difference between justice and cruelty is anything more than the width of an open hand. Furthermore, adversity here did not simply reveal strength or expose weakness. It demanded an accounting of every hidden torment and each unspoken hope. The ordeal brought an inversion of expectations. Those expected to be pillars stumbled, and the ones counted out displayed unexpected courage. In the bleak confines of the Citadel, courage was sometimes the restraint not to punish, sometimes the resolve not to look away. The trials pressed inward, past public bravado to places where neither law nor violence could reach, the sanctum of one's own conscience. Amidst this, faith itself was recalibrated, not as dogma anchored in scripture or decree, but as living conviction, trembling and raw. It found expression in unlikely places, in the careful tending of the corridor's orphaned creature by rough hands, or the silent resolve to treat a condemned man with dignity despite his alleged crimes. Each act, insignificant in the world's eyes, signified a revolution of spirit, an assertion that suffering, met with compassion, could cultivate meaning out of even the starkest soil. Through the contour of their tribulations, those within the Citadel exemplified a lesson that cannot be learned where life flows comfortably. Resilience, you see, grows not in the absence of pain, but in the relentless choice to reach again toward the light, even as the dusk presses in. The question posed is not merely about the endurance of body or mind. It's about whether a heart exposed to so much sorrow can remain open without shattering, and whether, in that openness, the possibility of redemption flickers, faint but persistent, against the gathering dark. Unraveling the pivotal moments that would forever alter the fabric of the Citadel, a subtle current of change began gathering force, at once electrifying and destabilizing. One day did not fade quietly into the next as it once had. Instead, the architecture itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation, as though every stone were a witness awaiting revelation. Shadows grew restless in the corridors, their familiar boundaries distorted by a sense of looming inevitability. Into this charge swept an event that did not simply disrupt routine, but fractured the ordered world Elias clung to. A sudden storm of suffering descended upon him, brutal and incapacitating. No protocol could shield him from the sharp intrusion of agony as his body, once so reliable, became a battlefield. And yet, in the throes of vulnerability, the unimaginable unfolded. Kael, so often reduced to rumor and speculation, extended a presence marked not by menace but by a merciful intent that transcended all expectation. In a moment neither guard nor prisoner could have anticipated, Kael reached his hand toward Elias and, with an unearthly calm, wrought a transformation so profound it defied all reason. Here, the surface of reality parted, exposing a layer of existence few dare contemplate. Pain, once knotted deep in muscle and memory, slipped free, drawn out of Elias's body and into Kael's own form, as if sorrow itself obeyed the will of this captive. The torment that had loomed invincible was, in seconds, exhaled by Kael in the manifestation of a dense, shadowy vapor, dissipating into the cold air. What had seemed immutable, that suffering must be borne alone or subdued by force, was suddenly, overwhelmingly refuted. In the hushed hours that followed, when Elias found himself alone with the man who had saved him, Kael spoke with a weariness that seemed to stretch beyond his years. "I bear the gift of restoration, Captain," he whispered, his voice thin as parchment. "But it is no blessing. Every wound I heal, every sickness I draw out, I feel it all. The world's suffering flows through me like a river without end." His eyes, hollow and ancient, met Elias's. "You fear my execution. I do not. Death is not my punishment. It is the only peace I have left to hope for." Yet, the aftermath of miracles is rarely simple. With the extraction of Elias's pain came a turbulent rush of questions that could not be contained by skepticism or the comforts of hierarchy. If such mysterious grace flourished, dormant and unrecognized, in this place of punishment and despair, might not the entire premise upon which the Citadel operated be compromised? Moreover, the revelation of Kael's inexplicable ability ignited a crisis within Elias that pierced deeper than physical affliction ever could. Where others might have recoiled in suspicion or reverted to the shelter of protocol, Elias found himself compelled, despite his stoicism, to confront the possibility that everything he knew about justice, power, and guilt might stand upon unreliable ground. This event, so intimate in its execution yet seismic in impact, did not remain cloaked within the private torment of its witness. Word, slippery and charged, slipped through the cracks in discipline. In hushed corners and fleeting glances, whispers germinated, rippling outwards in search of fertile minds. But unlike the rumors that had accompanied Kael's arrival, laden with suspicion and dread, these new stories took shape in the belly of awe, shadowed by a fragile hope that the walls of the Citadel could not possibly endure what was now set in motion. Beneath the outward tumult, a subtler transformation unfolded in Elias. Circumstances no longer allowed him the comfort of dispassionate ritual. Responsibility acquired an urgent dimension that transcended the letter of the law. No longer was his authority an armor. It became an obligation, charged with the restless energy of truth insisting on itself. He could no more ignore the magnitude of what he had witnessed than he could return the pain to his own body. The moral geometry of the Citadel shifted, placing the paths of rumor, investigation, and forbidden trust at odds with the inertia of mindless obedience. For you, as you watch him grapple with new knowledge, the lesson lies in recognizing the moment when the world you inhabit cracks open and something unexplainable intrudes. What you do when certainty unravels and you confront the unthinkable reveals the true contour of your character, not in theory, but each time you choose whether to silence or pursue the inconvenient truths that beckon at the periphery of your convictions. In these moments, you see, transformation is not some distant thunder. It arrives as an intimate storm, upending the order within and without, demanding not only your attention but your very capacity for change. The Citadel's stifling corridors absorbed secrets like sponges, but none lingered longer or more uncomfortably than an exposed lie. As news of the inexplicable event rippled through the underbelly of the fortress, not with words but with the electric pressure of speculation, a new unease took root. Elias, previously certain his world was constructed of stark truths and enforceable boundaries, was now thrust into a realm riddled with ambiguities. The once rigid architecture of his understanding began collapsing inward, prompting a more perilous journey, the unmasking of unseen manipulation and the re-evaluation of every judgment he had once considered absolute. Amid these tremors, the Citadel's lines of allegiance and suspicion began to warp in strange patterns. The guards who patrolled beside Elias each carried private interpretations of the chaos unfurling among them. Some, hardened by years of seeing only guilt, clung even more rigidly to the narrative of Kael's monstrosity, their certainty acting as a shield against the discomfort of doubt. Others, though, started to glimpse inconsistencies. The uncharacteristic silence of supposed witnesses, the unnatural haste with which evidence had been catalogued, the absence of details that should have been glaring. Resentment brewed between those unwilling to question their orders and those drawn, often against their wishes, toward inconvenient truths. Instead of overt confrontation, interactions were marked by weighted silences, furtive glances, and small acts of subversion. A gesture here, a deliberately misplaced item there, etching fissures within the ranks. As conspiracies seeded themselves deeper, the Citadel's moral environment shifted too. No longer was wrongdoing the sole domain of those shackled in the lower cells. Duplicity had infiltrated the very machinery tasked with keeping justice pure. The realization crept up on Elias in moments that felt almost accidental. A missing entry in a logbook, a witness who refused to meet his eyes, a discarded trinket carrying a symbol he'd seen before on a prisoner's wrist. The sense of order he'd upheld for years unraveled strand by strand as he and a small cluster of guards began their quiet investigation, working by moonlight and whisper between patrols, parsing lies from half-truths with painstaking patience. What marked the turning point, however, was not a single revelation, but a cascade of them, each disclosure more unsettling than the last. It emerged that Kael's conviction was built on testimony coerced under threats, physical evidence crafted by hands accustomed to forging guilt, and a narrative that suited someone else's safety better than the truth itself. The true architect of those unspeakable acts, the ritualistic murders that had cemented Kael's infamy, was traced to Matthias, a prisoner already confined in the Citadel's deepest cells. A man of silver tongue and vicious cunning, Matthias had woven Kael's condemnation with the precision of a master manipulator, using the gentle giant's appearance and isolation as the perfect canvas for his own monstrous crimes. Here, the very fabric of justice had been weaponized as a camouflage cloak, hiding the true predator at the heart of the system. The true architect of those unspeakable acts, the ritualistic murders that had cemented Kael's infamy, was traced to Matthias, a prisoner already confined in the Citadel's deepest cells. A man of silver tongue and vicious cunning, Matthias had woven Kael's condemnation with the precision of a master manipulator, using the gentle giant's appearance and isolation as the perfect canvas for his own monstrous crimes. Here, the very fabric of justice had been weaponized as a camouflage cloak, hiding the true predator at the heart of the system. Faced with this knowledge, Elias found himself confronting the paradox of authority. The same system that granted him power to punish also provided fertile ground for corruption to take root. He was drawn into a labyrinth with no map, where each turn held hazards more subtle than violence. Social ostracism, threats to those he cared for, the insidious poison of doubt. Even so, he pressed on, unraveling the threads with a doggedness fueled less by any promise of victory than by refusal to be complicit through silence. Such tenacity in pursuit of truth is not heroic in a grand sense, but rather a stubborn, necessary act demanded by conscience. Now shift your gaze to your own experience with systems you trust without examination. Imagine how your certainty might be undermined by a realization that the foundations are spiked with rot. That loyalty sometimes demands not blind obedience, but the courage to see what others have chosen to ignore. The Citadel reflects every institution that claims infallibility. Just as its stones are darkened by centuries of sorrow, so too are our most revered customs vulnerable to the slow seep of falsehood and fear. Through this maelstrom of uncertainty and betrayal, something vital began to emerge. The realization that for justice to mean anything, it must be defended against its own worst impulses. For Elias and those willing to challenge the prevailing silence, the true battle was not against a single enemy, but against the gravity of a world accustomed to expedient lies. Only by accepting the irreversibility of their actions and the full cost of knowledge could they hope to reclaim a fragment of the honor so easily lost in the twilight between law and compassion. When the hour arrived for confrontation with the unvarnished truth, the Citadel's silence sharpened into a blade, pressing at the heart of every man and woman within its reach. Muffled winds rattled the narrow windows, as if the world outside felt the moral calculus unfolding within stone halls. A reckoning, once abstract and distant, now materialized as a gauntlet of soul-rending choices. In these moments, each participant's convictions, carefully cultivated, sometimes forcibly shaped, were peeled back to expose the beating core beneath. No rulebook could prescribe the answer to what lay ahead. Only the ignition of conscience provided guidance through the fog. Consequently, the abysmal corridor known as the Twilight Path became not just a route toward execution, but a crucible of existential decision. While the order to proceed seemed irrevocable, standing at this threshold triggered a surge of internal dissension. Every step traced the trembling edge between absolution and complicity. Elias faced the searing reality that upholding the law might mean betraying the deeper wellspring of justice he once believed absolute. This was no longer an arena for principled debate or theoretical ethics. Here, personal responsibility weighed more than the kingdom's decrees, and each handler of fate became judge, participant, and spectator in their own relentless trial. Moreover, the weight of moral dilemma pressed upon more than just the obvious players. For the younger guards, adrenaline clashed with the dawning awareness that their role exceeded mere enforcement. Some felt the urge to rebel against established orders surge in their veins, only to be checked by the haunting specter of past complicity. Even those previously content with neutrality discovered themselves tangled in a web of unseen consequences. In every corner of the citizen, the ripple of ethical crisis forced a reevaluation not only of Kael's fate, but of their own capacity to act with integrity in a world humming with shades of gray. Adding another layer, the dilemma extended beyond individuals to infect the relationships that had shaped daily survival. Loyalty among guards, once a simple pact against chaos, became treacherous terrain. Alliances rooted in mutual protection now threatened to unravel under the strain of conflicting values. Friends traded glances heavy with unspoken queries. Would you follow me into ruin for what you believe is right? Suspicion dwelled where trust had flourished, blurring the boundaries between ally and adversary. The collapse of certainty echoed through even the most seasoned guards as they weighed not only who deserved mercy, but who could be relied upon when the cost of principle threatened to overturn everything familiar. At the same time, the very architecture of the Citadel seemed to shudder under the possibility that mercy could be both a virtue and a transgression. Every decision resonated through its tunnels, leaving imprints on those who made them and those who merely witnessed. Some recoiled, unable to bear the risk of reshaping ancient codes. Others pressed forward, drawn by a dawning realization that the greatest breaches are often necessary to let light in. These tensions ignited moments of personal and collective revelation, moments when, even in the face of grave danger, courage burst forth, not as defiance but as the quiet willingness to accept whatever consequences integrity might demand. Now, reflect on your own passage through moral labyrinths. When the lines between duty and right blur, how do you measure the costs of silence or intervention? The Citadel's test magnifies the choices faced daily in far subtler arenas: when to stand up, when to yield, and how to bear the cost of convictions. The struggle here is not merely for survival or exoneration, but for the preservation or restoration of the self. Every soul who traverses such ground discovers that the hardest task is rarely what is imposed from without, but the reckoning one accepts within. As night unfurled once more in the Citadel, the fate of all within its walls pivoted on whether they dared to answer that silent, insistent summons toward the truth. The revelation within the Citadel sparked a momentum that no decree could restrain, setting every perception spinning toward a harrowing crescendo. Nowhere was this shift more acute than deep inside Elias's own sense of self, which splintered beneath the gravity of his next actions. Inwardly, he was compelled to measure not only the weight of Kael's existence, but the cascading impact his decisions would have on lives unseen. As the air around him thickened, so too did the burden of potential, an awareness that every deliberate or unintended gesture might ripple outward, forever altering destinies that fate and law once considered immovable. This was not the justice scripted by edicts and dogma, but the unyielding and often excruciating dictate of conscience blooming in real time. As those final days unfurled, fresh realities emerged like jagged stones from a retreating tide. The truth about Kael's powers, unfashionable, uncomfortable, yet undeniable, provoked a whirlwind of suppressed yearnings and half-extinguished hopes among the weary ranks. Some, confronted with an encounter so far beyond their known world, retreated behind routines more fiercely than ever, believing that if they clenched their eyes tightly enough, the impossible would dissolve back into legend. Others, emboldened, began to contemplate possibilities that months prior would have seemed inconceivable. Imagine the implications in your own life. When the unknown breaches your carefully constructed boundaries, do you respond by retreating into rigidity or leaning into curiosity, no matter how unsettling that path may be? Complicating this volatile landscape, the intricate latticework of guilt and innocence, long considered a static architecture, became animated with painful new ambiguities. Kael's gentle care for the wounded and the powerless beneath the Citadel's nose illuminated a reality far crueler than any ghost story, that systems designed to separate monsters from saints often fail to distinguish humanity from legend. Here, identity and reputation could be rewritten in an instant, but absolution lagged generations behind. The guards who harbored doubts now found their roles inverted. The lines of hierarchy were abruptly redrawn, and those once silenced by rank discovered themselves holding private scraps of the overarching truth. If you picture yourself in their shoes, you can sense the disquiet that creeps in, the notion that your next move might not only define your own fate, but become the template for others' courage or submission. Beyond the fracturing of loyalties, a quiet revolution stirred in the unseen moments after lights dimmed. Nightly, as the prison sound softened to the rhythm of distant footsteps and labored breath, ethical reckoning took root in those left awake with only their thoughts. Decades of precedent dissolved when confronted with the specificity of Kael's suffering, the dry crackle of fear in his posture, the relentless exhaustion etched across his face. While the world outside demanded closure and spectacle, inside the Citadel a more nuanced trial unfolded. Each participant tasked with the harrowing work of choosing vulnerability over indifference and presence over self-preservation. So in your own life, when confronted with injustice cloaked in respectability, Do you remain a bystander, or do you bear the agony of witnessing, allowing it to change you fundamentally? Now, the citadel itself seemed to mourn, its stones heavy with anticipation for the climax no one truly wished to witness. The burden of accumulated sorrow curled in every shadow, while each player braced for a reckoning not only with the law, but with themselves. Here lay the essence of consequence, not a ledger balanced, but a legacy inscribed. All around, the inevitability of sacrifice colored what remained unsaid and undone, and in that hush, the beginnings of transformation flickered, uncertain and indomitable. As dawn threaded its way through the thin, barred slits of the citadel, its pale glow revealed the aftermath, a landscape forever altered, strewn with remnants of decisions that could not be undone. The walls, usually so indifferent, now seemed to hold the echo of ancient lament, each stone imbued with the memory of sacrifice, pain, and transgression. In this altered quiet, those who survived the ordeal found themselves awake to a world in which no single act had left anyone unchanged. Living with the consequences, both visible and deeply hidden, replaced the fever of immediate crisis with a sobering reckoning that would not easily release its grip. In the days following, the citadel's routines resumed, yet the very air carried a different weight. Every step taken by Elias and his remaining guards was slower, more deliberate, as if the floor itself might collapse beneath them. The shape of authority had shifted. Those who once issued orders unquestioningly now met the eyes of their subordinates with a fraught awareness of the cost their choices had exacted. This recalibration of relationships was most evident in the glances exchanged during moments of silence, fleeting, loaded, and impossible to ignore. An invisible ledger of debts and regrets wove through these interactions, reshaping how each person navigated the boundaries between command and compassion. Meanwhile, the psychological imprint of all that had transpired pressed itself into dreams and waking moments alike. No one escaped unmarked. The oldest guards, their hands slowing with tremors only visible in the pale light. The younger men and women, restless and sleepless, haunted by decisions impossible to frame neatly as right or wrong. Even the smallest gestures, a hand given in support, bread shared in uneasy camaraderie, were now shaded with an understanding that life would not, could not return to its prior rhythms. In this new reality, the simplest acts of kindness became a rare currency, exchanged in the hope of restoring what had been fractured, however incompletely. Notably, the aftershock extended outside the citadel's stone embrace. Rumors, factual and embellished, slipped through the cracks in the fortress and drifted into nearby settlements. Word of what had happened, of a condemned man's unusual grace, of decisions that diverged from protocol, prompted subtle shifts beyond its walls. The reputation of the citadel, once ironclad, became a contested story, refracted through gossip, suspicion, admiration, and fear. Villagers speculated in uncertain voices about the morality of those who administered justice and the nature of the accused, each telling growing more turbulent as it was carried farther from its origin point. Consequently, the citadel's legacy was no longer solely defined by its rituals, but by the shape of the questions and doubts it left scattered in the kingdom's collective mind. Looking further, the scars delivered by trauma and moral rupture complicated the very idea of healing. The aftermath illuminated how endurance could be both a blessing and a curse. While survival offered a slim possibility of redemption, it also forced those involved to shoulder burdens that had no clear destination. No one emerged from the flames untouched. Every recollection, every fleeting moment of peace was accompanied by the specter of what had transpired, reshaping identity and intent in unpredictable ways. Some sought solace in renewed faith, others in physical action, many more in the compartmentalization of memory. Yet all, at different speeds and in radically different manners, had to answer the call of what comes after, the slow, often agonizing process of transforming survivorship into meaning. At this juncture, consider the enduring impact of your own most intense ordeals. In their wake, actions once justified or inevitable may reveal themselves as wounds or lessons, coloring your sense of self and the world with enduring hues. Navigating these consequences demands not erasure but integration, a willingness to let both triumph and scar be part of the evolving story. The Citadel's inhabitants now found themselves living with ghosts, not only of those lost, but of former selves now irretrievable. In that, the path forward was never straight, but twisted and fraught, yet always at its core, profoundly and unforgettably human. In the silent wake of irreversible decisions and upended histories, life at the Citadel adopted an unfamiliar cadence, one not dictated by rules, but by memory and an altered sense of possibility. Threads of legacy began to twist themselves through the routines of those left behind, shaping the atmosphere with an undercurrent of expectation few could name. Eyes that once skirted the horizon now lingered on the small things, someone pausing before the memorial nooks tucked away in crumbling corners, or a newly etched mark on the ancient banister, catching dawn's timid rays. Within this hush emerged the sense that what had happened within these walls could not remain contained. The very stones pulsed with the tension of what might someday radiate outward. Thus, legacy grew not as the echo of triumph or defeat, but as the living presence of transformation, sometimes subtle, at other times seismic. Vivid gestures, previously viewed as inconsequential ritual, gained surprising resonance. A solitary guard scraping frost from a railing before the morning rounds now carried the gravity of remembrance, a signal that the warmth once offered to the condemned had become a practice extending to the living, even if only out of stubborn habit. Each small act, scarcely noticed in the daily din, became part of an invisible inheritance, hinting that meaning outlasts the moment. The Citadel's legacy, therefore, did not stem purely from the headline facts of who suffered or persevered, but from how pain and compassion etched themselves into gestures that would quietly persist through generations. Now reflect for a moment on how your own smallest choices ripple forward, carried into someone else's future by nothing more than the memory of grace. Furthermore, shifts in the Citadel's climate of thought revealed themselves most clearly when the unexpected arrived. When a fleeing bird crashed into the heavy grates, wings battered, instinct eclipsed by panic, a young warder found himself compelled to offer aid. In the days before the ordeal, such an action might have drawn laughter or reproof. Now it became a test, an opportunity to act with care, despite the world's indifference. The outcome of such moments, while minor in the eyes of those hungry for spectacle, signaled a profound internal shift. Mercy had become not merely permissible, but quietly admired. These moments, an unspoken code transmitted between those who had truly seen suffering, wove resilience and hope into the unremarkable fabric of daily survival. Adding yet another dimension, the memory of Kael's presence demanded reinterpretation by those left in charge. Where once power had been measured by command, now it was measured by the willingness to assume responsibility for the intangible. When storms swept over the stronghold, battering the parapets with sheets of relentless water, captains and guards alike considered the unseen fortitude it took to hold fast under pressure, not just of weather but of conscience. This reframing inspired subtle inquiries among the youngest recruits, who found themselves less interested in legends of the Citadel's might than in whispered stories of unexpected kindness shown in hidden places. The transformation seeded by suffering was more persistent than fear. It could not easily be routed, only redirected. Ultimately, legacy within the Citadel became a living contradiction. Each person grappled with the knowledge that what was lost might never be restored, but what was unbequeathed, a look, a gesture, a sacrifice, had become a new foundation. Night after night, as time unspooled in the echo of watchmen's footfalls and the world listened from afar, the persistent light of changed hearts navigated an uncertain path. That legacy, sculpted from both ruin and resilience, moved quietly from hand to hand, promising not resolution, but the uneasy, noble work of illuminating darkened halls with whatever hope could be summoned in the space that remained. Reflecting on this journey so far, it becomes evident that beneath each visible event, a subtler architecture of meaning has arisen, one forged in the interplay between conscience and circumstance, duty and vulnerability. The surface of the citadel, etched with shadow and resilience alike, stands as an emblem of the inextricable link between what endures and what must fall away. In traversing its corridors, both physical and moral, we have moved not just through stone and silence, but through realms where conviction is shaped by tension and risk, and where integrity does not always manifest as triumph, but often as the soft torchlight carried through darkness. Reflecting on this journey so far, it becomes evident that beneath each visible event, a subtler architecture of meaning has arisen, one forged in the interplay between conscience and circumstance, duty and vulnerability. The surface of the citadel, etched with shadow and resilience alike, stands as an emblem of the inextricable link between what endures and what must fall away. In traversing its corridors, both physical and moral, we have moved not just through stone and silence, but through realms where conviction is shaped by tension and risk, and where integrity does not always manifest as triumph, but often as the soft torchlight carried through darkness. If you listen closely, you may discern how uncertainty itself becomes a kind of compass, each ambiguity pressing the inhabitants, and in turn ourselves, toward a reckoning with deeper truths. In this way, what began as a drama of rules and rituals quietly revealed the limits of certainty, its edges softened by an influx of compassion, and the steady, persistent unrest that stirs when pain is neither ignored nor inflicted, but attended to with honest reckoning. The citadel, once imagined as a vessel of finality, has become a crucible for questions that refuse to yield to mere solutions. Every gesture, no matter how small or fraught, takes on new resonance when witnessed against a persistent shadow of consequence. As we pivot toward the culmination of these intertwined narratives, a tapestry emerges where scars and transformations interlace, and hope competes with regret for prominence in every heartbeat. It is not the outcome alone that gives this passage its weight, but the accumulation of moments, those trembling instances in which hesitation gives way to resolve, or where silence is broken by a single act of tenderness that alters the rhythm of memory and expectation. The consequences of such moments do not remain confined to the walls that witness them. Rather, they echo outward, folding into the evolving allegiances, losses, and recoveries that define the present and reshape the imagination of what the future may hold. Through this lens, legacy ceases to be a static inheritance. Instead, it morphs into a living current, sometimes visible, more often sensed. A shared alignment, fragile and luminous, that threads through every soul touched by the Citadel's ordeal. What has unfolded thus far does not simply dissolve in the aftermath. Rather, it settles into the marrow of those left to chart the way forward, infusing their decisions and gestures with a gravity that is neither heavy nor burdensome, but quietly momentous. Just as river stones are polished by time and pressure, so too does the collective undertaking, with its griefs and small mercies, grant new shape to what it means to strive beyond the knowledge of loss. In light of these converging pathways, anticipation gathers, opening a threshold where the full measure of transformation and cost awaits expression. You may sense, even now, how the very air thickens with the weight of what has been risked and the subtle emergence of something greater than mere survival. It is the point at which theory and memory, yearning and exhaustion combine to fashion the possibility of redemption, or to whisper perhaps a finer understanding of what it means to bear witness, to persist, and ultimately to carry light through even the sternest strongholds of despair. As the drama prepares to offer its closing insight, you are invited not just to observe, but to inhabit the ambiguous space where endings and beginnings continually remake one another, a liminal realm rich with echoes, poised on the edge of revelation. There is a silence at the end of every reckoning, a silence richer and deeper than the absence of sound, formed from everything that has been endured and all that must still be carried. Within the ancient stones of the citadel, this stillness lingers, imprinted not just in corridors and shadows, but in the hearts of those who survived its most searching trials. Yet the emptiness is not barren. It pulses with the memory of what it means, in the smallest moments and quietest gestures, to choose mercy when fear demands cruelty, or to reach toward truth when self-preservation would urge you to turn away. Measured against the steady and passive passage of time, the events in that place might seem inconsequential. A handful of lives weighed against the countless that have come before and will come after. Measured against the steady and passive passage of time, the events in that place might seem inconsequential. A handful of lives weighed against the countless that have come before and will come after. But meaning is rarely born from grand design. It blooms instead in the narrow spaces where despair presses near and the fragile light of conscience persists. Each impulse of kindness, each tremor of doubt that leads to new seeing, each refusal to accept convenient falsehood, and each choice to endure for another's sake. These are the actions that, quietly but irrevocably, reshape what is possible, not only in forgotten fortresses but in the world at large. What sets the story apart, and what endures long after the walls have grown cold, is not the scale of suffering or the spectacle of sacrifice, but the simple, relentless insistence that even where hope has long since been exiled, the possibility of new light remains. The legacy of those who walked the Twilight Path is not merely in what was lost or who was saved, but in the way they continue to risk themselves for belief in something better, even or especially when no outcome could make them whole. Their struggle, haunted and imperfect, becomes a silent inheritance, a charge to anyone who encounters shadows, whether within ancient ramparts or in the silent battles of ordinary days. 3 centuries have passed since that dawn when the Twilight Path claimed its most innocent condemned. The citadel itself has crumbled into ruin, its stones scattered and reclaimed by moss and vine. The kingdom that decreed Kael's execution has long since fallen to dust, its laws forgotten, its archives consumed by fire and flood. Yet one figure remains, walking roads that have seen 100 generations rise and fall. Elias still lives. His body, which should have surrendered to age decades after that terrible day, persists with stubborn, unnatural vitality. He has watched empires bloom and wither. He has buried friends, lovers, and the children of children he once knew. His face, though lined with the weight of centuries, refuses the grave's embrace. 3 centuries have passed since that dawn when the Twilight Path claimed its most innocent condemned. The citadel itself has crumbled into ruin, its stones scattered and reclaimed by moss and vine. The kingdom that decreed Kael's execution has long since fallen to dust, its laws forgotten, its archives consumed by fire and flood. Yet one figure remains, walking roads that have seen 100 generations rise and fall. Elias still lives. His body, which should have surrendered to age decades after that terrible day, persists with stubborn, unnatural vitality. He has watched empires bloom and wither. He has buried friends, lovers, and the children of children he once knew. His face, though lined with the weight of centuries, refuses the grave's embrace. And in the depths of sleepless nights, of which there have been tens of thousands, he understands with crystalline clarity that this unending existence is not reward but reckoning. He is condemned to remember, to carry in perfect and agonizing detail the memory of the day humanity extinguished its purest light. The gift Kael bore, the power to absorb the world's suffering, died with him on those black stones, and no force in heaven or earth has seen fit to restore it. Elias walks as living testament to what was lost, a man preserved not by blessing but by an ancient, implacable duty to bear witness. Some nights, in villages where he rests as a stranger, he tells a story. Most dismiss it as the rambling of an old wanderer touched by madness. But a few, those with eyes sharp enough to see the weight he carries, the sorrow that never dulls, listen in hushed reverence. They sense, without fully comprehending, that they stand before something more than man, a monument of flesh and breath, sculpted by regret and consecrated by an impossible span of years. And so Elias continues, unable to die, unable to forget. He is the bearer of memory in a world that has forgotten how to grieve what it destroyed. His punishment is to outlive comfort, to watch the same mistakes echo across the ages, and to hold fast to the truth that once, in a fortress of judgment and shadow, light walked among the condemned, and humanity, in its fear and rigidity, let it die. This, at its heart, is the answer offered by the Citadel Sorrow, proof that redemption is never a singular event, but an unfolding practice, asked of us again and again in countless forms. The true test is not whether suffering can be banished or every wrong made right, but whether, standing at the uncertain threshold between darkness and dawn, we can answer cruelty with compassion and inertia with the courage to act. It is in these decisions, made quietly and often alone, that lives are altered and legacies forged. So as you step away from this story, consider what light you harbor, how you might become the bearer of it, however faint, in the places where the world's cold logic insists none can exist. The quiet choices you make, the burdens you help shoulder, the vigilance you keep against easy certainties, these shape not only your own journey, but the horizons of everyone you touch. The Citadel stands as both warning and promise. There will always be walls, but there will also always be hands, imperfect but steadfast, reaching in the darkness. The true practice begins now, in the moment you choose, despite wounds and weariness, to believe that something deeply human and luminous can endure, and, in doing so, become a small, stubborn beacon against the gathering dusk.